Hi, welcome to our next lecture in microeconomics for international management. This lecture will be dedicated to the question how market mechanism actually works. There are a few a few questions here that we want to answer. And the first one would be, what actually decides upon market prices? Is it more demand? Is it more supply? As you remember from our last lecture, free market has this natural tendency, this ability to achieve the so-called market equilibrium state. So this is this point where, as you can see, demand curve intersects with the supply curve, and this point of intersection was market equilibrium. But the question actually is, what has greater influence on shaping the price? As here we have equilibrium price. Is it demand that is important, more important than supply, or vice versa? Is it supply more important than demand? This question remained greatly unanswered for a couple of decades, or you could say even more than a century, because various economists were able to find various answers supported by various examples. And obviously, when you consider the monopolistic market, right? Monopoly, where we have just one supplier, one seller, and many buyers, then it is quite obvious that the supply side has a great impact on price. But we can also imagine the reversed situation, known under the name of monopsony. Monopsony is the situation when we've got just one buyer, one huge buyer that is responsible for creating demand in this market, and we've got many small suppliers. So you can imagine, for instance, a big company buying coffee from small farmers, right? So that would be the case of, let's say, Nescafé buying coffee beans from many small farmers. Obviously, such buyer has a huge market power. But these are special cases. What about, let's say, normal markets, right? Normal meaning pretty competitive, where we have quite many sellers, quite many buyers. So what then decides upon prices? And that was Alfred Marshall who first decided to answer this question the following way. Think of demand and supply as two blades of scissors. And if you have scissors and you want to cut through a page of paper, then the question, what blade cuts, is kind of irrelevant, because you need both blades in scissors to let them cut. That was a very, we could say, clever answer. But actually, there is more to that. Alfred Marshall was the first economist who paid attention to a very important factor, which is time. He showed that actually supply changes over time. As you remember, both demand and supply were defined as flows, economic flows, meaning these are kind of variables that can only be considered within certain time frame, right? So that's why we say about annual supply of something, monthly demand for something else. So this is always related to time. And obviously, the question of what decides upon prices depends on time that we consider. Let's have a look at the first case being very short run. Okay? We do not define now how short is this very short run. It depends on industries, market situations, some particular situations. But basically, we could say, let's consider a very short period of time. A good example can be a coffee vending machine, right? In many public places, including universities, you can find a coffee vending machine. So you put some coins or you use your credit or debit card and you get a little cup of coffee. Let's imagine that the price for one cup of coffee is, let's say, $1. And if we consider a very short period of time, the supply of such coffee tends to be fixed. Hence, the supply curve in this graph is pretty vertical. What does it mean in practice? Well, imagine that I say, all right, during next 5 minutes, I'm gonna buy any given number of such cups of coffee from you at, let's say, $5. And you can find a business idea here because it costs only $1. I would pay you $5, so $4 is actually your profit. So the question is, how many cups of coffee could you supply to me in 5 minutes' time? And that would be, let's say, 3. Because it takes time for you to go there, it takes time for you to come back, it takes time for you to actually make those cups of coffee. So in this time frame of 5 minutes, you can produce 3 cups of coffee. Now, imagine that I try to offer you more money. Like I say, no, it's not gonna be $5. I want you to produce me more, to supply me more such cups of coffee. Therefore, I'm gonna pay you $100 per each, with the cost for you of $1. $100 is actually a very nice price that I'm willing to pay. So you would have like $99 of your profit. That is a great business opportunity. But the question is, if we still stick to this 5-minute period, can you change, can you increase the amount of coffee cups that you can supply to me? No. This 5 minutes is the crucial factor here. You cannot supply me with more than 3 cups. Even if demand is growing, and you can see growth in demand here, so there is a shift of this curve, the curve, to the right, you can see that prices that correspond with this shift, they go up and the quantity stays the same. You can see it on this horizontal axis of Q, right? Q stays the same. And demand actually influences prices. Bigger demand, like D' here, you get higher prices. Smaller demand, like D, prices are smaller as well. So over a very short period of time, supply can be treated as fixed, and demand would entirely decide upon prices. Supply decides upon quantity, demand decides upon prices. What about our other cases? There are 2 other situations we might consider. You can see both of them here. This is short-run analysis and long-run analysis. Let's consider this last one first, long-run thing. You can clearly see that the supply curve looks totally different when compared to very short run. In the previous graph, this supply curve was vertical. Now for the long run, it's horizontal. What does that mean, and what are the consequences? Imagine that I announce that I'm going to keep on buying those cups of coffee from vending machine at the price of $1 only. My question to you is, would it be any business opportunity in what I said? I will buy any number of cups of coffee from vending machines at the price of $1 for, let's say, well, what's the long run? Let's say for 5 years. So my offer stays valid for 5 years. At first glance, many students say, well, that's not any business. I mean, you offer just $1, and actually $1 is what I have to put in the vending machine to get this cup, so my profit would be zero. But actually, if you have entrepreneurial mind, you can see a business opportunity here. Why is that so? Imagine that you buy such a vending machine. What is the cost of producing 1 cup of coffee? If the vending machine at your university sells them at $1, that probably means that the total cost of 1 such cup does not exceed $0.50. In other words, it costs you, if you own such a vending machine, it costs you only 50 cents, and you can sell it at $1, making 50 cents of margin. That would be a nice profit, actually. And you have time. You have 5 years, because my offer was valid for 5 years. So you have 5 years to keep on buying such machines, producing such coffee, selling to me. So in fact, for a very long period of time, you can produce as much cups of coffee as I would like. In this example, with long-run analysis, you can see that the quantity produced now, look at the graph, the quantity produced over the long run depends on demand. So this is, again, totally different than we had for the very short run perspective, because then demand decided about prices. Now, over the long run, demand decides upon the quantity. What decides upon the price? Well, that's supply. Supply comes from costs, especially from marginal cost. So actually, the level of this supply curve, whether it is lower or higher in the graph, depends on how big is marginal cost. If the marginal cost is bigger, then supply would move up. Here you can see, over the long run, demand decides upon quantities and supply decides upon prices. Totally different, right, from very short-run perspective. And the last case, I say it's the last one, but actually this is the most popular case. We are going to work on this kind of perspective, short-run perspective, quite a lot. You can see that in this graph, the supply curve is neither vertical nor horizontal. It's got this positive slope, so it goes climbing up. For bigger prices, greater quantities supplied, and this is short run, right? And in this case, we can see that demand, when it changes, it decides partly on prices, partly on quantities. And if supply changes, we have the same situation. Partly, that would be prices that got impacted by this change in supply. Partly, these are quantities. This all is kind of very important for understanding the concept of elasticity. And in our next lectures, we are going to investigate on demand elasticity and supply elasticity, and you will see that those two ideas are kind of interlinked.